Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today will be Anthony Dasher. He's a beat writer following Georgia at Georgia's rival site. That is UGAsports.com. Dash and I will talk not just about Georgia and the upcoming football matchup with Vanderbilt, but also a special connection he has to the Vandy boys. Anthony has a family member who is a commitment to a future Vanderbilt baseball class. We will discuss that in the podcast, too. This show is sponsored by the Well Coffee House, a Nashville area coffee house that provides fresh roasted coffee along with house-made pastries, breakfast, and lunch offerings. The Well has 5 locations to serve you in the Nashville area. Those are Brentwood, Green Hills downtown, Bellevue, and the Cool Springs Lifeway. More information can be found at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. We also thank our co-presenting sponsor, Wellspire. That's Nashville's Learning and Development Center. You can find them in the Gulch. Today's news presented by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in any type of accident, call Taylor or Russell at 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Those are good dudes, and we appreciate their sponsorship of this show. Well, it's been a slow news week. We are still waiting for several Vanderbilt baseball players to make the decision about signing professionally or coming back. In the meantime, a neat news story coming out of Vanderbilt. Tight end Cody Markle, who you can follow on Twitter at MERKEL24, announced today that he is launching a not-for-profit called Turner's Heroes. That is in honor of former Vanderbilt tight end Turner Cockrell, who passed away at the end of last year. Cody's organization is seeking to honor his fallen teammate, and what they will do is provide support for patients in children's hospitals through hero events and the customization of superhero capes for patients. So really good endeavor there. Hope you will follow them on Twitter and lend some support to that foundation. What a cool thing to do, and also a great way to honor Turner Cockrell, a guy who people had a ton of respect for, and rightfully so. Speaking of which, I'd like to make a special announcement on behalf of one of our sponsors, Josh Minton. He is promoting a camp called Camp Horizon through its second annual cornhole tournament. That's August 24th. We will have more information about that later on the podcast in later episodes. But they're looking for sponsors to sign up. Camp Horizon is a week-long camp for kids with cancer to learn how to live beyond their treatment. It's a special place for kids to build lifelong relationships with others who truly understand them and what they're going through. These kids receive amazing care from their doctors to heal their bodies and come to Camp Horizon to heal their soul. You can contact Josh at josh@hqinsurance.com. You can phone him, his cell number 615-933-1979. I hope several of you will reach out to Josh and help support their endeavor. Joining us now, Anthony Dasher, or Dash as a lot of his friends call him. I consider Dash one of my buddies, one of the guys that I've known the longest in this profession, one of my favorite guys in this profession. Dash, thanks for joining us today. I hope you're doing well. Of course, you work at the fine site UGAsports.com, which is the Rivals home for Georgia fans on the network. Appreciate you joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure, Chris. Good to talk with you.
Well, before we get into Georgia, you've got a very special connection to Vanderbilt. It's not technically a connection yet, but it's going to be, and I will let you explain.
Yeah. Well, my cousin, Carter Holton, is up his sophomore year at Benedictine in Savannah. Pitcher, outfielder for the Cadets, and is is looking like he's going to be one of the top players in the state here very soon. He's already considered by some the top lefty in the state, and his numbers are, I hate to kind of, like I'm just hyperboling my own cousin here, but he's putting some of the numbers that are just pinball-like. I mean, went 9-0 this past year in 60.1 innings, struck out 137 batters. He walked 16, allowed just 19 hits, gave up 2 earned runs all year long. Both those runs came in the quarterfinals of the state playoffs. BC plays AAA ball, which is the third highest, lowest, however you want to call it, classification in the state of Georgia. As a hitter, he batted .456 last year and 125 at bats, hit 7 home runs, drove in 39. and most recently, as a member of Team Georgia, was competing in the Sun Belt Classic in Oklahoma, and they played, ironically enough, Team Tennessee. Tennessee won the game 1-0, but Carter, threw a no hitter, struck out 12, walked 3, and that was coming after, as a true freshman, threw a perfect game against Statesboro High School, where he struck out 17 batters in 7 innings. So he's got quite the future. He throws 92. He's a 3-quarter delivery guy. Really has a bright future, if I do say so myself. And I think Vanderbilt's definitely getting a good one. Carter, Vanderbilt's always been his school. It's kind of funny in a way. I mean, his family, as you might expect, are pretty much all Georgia fans, but he recognizes the success that Vanderbilt has had over the years. Of course, just now winning another national title, but also all the players, the pitchers in particular, that Vandy has put in the major leagues. And that's obviously his goal. And so I know I've talked to him about it a few times. He's very excited about beginning his career in Nashville.
Yeah, so he's in the Savannah area, correct?
Correct, yes.
I would not think there's a ton of Vanderbilt fans down there. I would think that was a very Georgia-dominated area. Maybe some Gators mixed in, although it's a little away from the state line. Maybe some Georgia Tech. But how did that happen exactly? Because he's wanted to play at Vanderbilt for much longer than when he committed to them.
He's a student of the game. He's recognized for a long time that what Coach Corbin has done, and he's always wanted to be a part of that. I mean, he's a very, very smart young man, very humble kid. Does not take his talent for granted, which is kind of funny because there's no one in my family until Carter came along and had a drop of athletic talent to speak of. So I just kind of fell on him, so to speak. But he's nurtured the talent. He takes his talent very seriously, and but yeah, he's talked about Vanderbilt to me for the longest time, and again, he's been set on this for quite a while. Even before he committed, last year, he was talking up the Commodores big time to me.
Well, I want to ask you something. The numbers were, I mean, you and I were texting about this yesterday. Video game numbers is, to put it mildly, is what he put up. I don't think, did you say he didn't give up a run till his last outing of the season and is what, 50-something? Earned run the last game of the year in the playoffs. I know he's played some really good teams. You mentioned the Summer Bowl. What is the general level of competition like around the Savannah area in his district and such?
It's very good, and Benedictine will go out of the way, play some better teams. In fact, I think your listener will find this very interesting. Last year, at his freshman season, Benedictine played North Oconee, where Kumar Rocker pitched in high school, and Carter got a hit against Kumar, and although Carter did not get a hit, he did at least make contact off the big guy, and he keeps talking about that. That is probably one of his favorite ones. Got to face somebody of Kumar's caliber, and Norfolk only won that game easily, obviously. But him and Kumar are actually pretty good friends right now. I know they contact each other on Twitter, follow each other. So and Carter, I know, hopes to follow in his footsteps.
Yeah, Georgia in general has got to be one of the top 5 states out there in general for baseball talent. I mean, they produce an amazing amount of players.
They do, and right now the team that Carter's on, Team Elite Georgia, is a top program, if you want to call it that, for kids Carter's age right now. I know in the squad right now there's probably 8 or 9 guys who are already committed to the schools, and they go around and they play teams from other states who have the same amount of kids. I know, in fact, that the Team Tennessee team, I can't remember the young man's name right now, but he's committed to go to Ole Miss to pitch. So Carter's already seeing guys, who are on his level, who are playing, major college ball, and so far, again, he's just having some crazy success right now. Just hope he can keep it up.
I want to ask you, because Kumar Rocker has played high school ball at Athens. I don't think he lived there the whole time, but
right,
what was the buzz in and around Athens when he was playing high school ball about him?
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, this guy, high school kid, 16, 17, 18-year-old kid who was throwing 90, 95 miles an hour, and big as he is, I mean, he's had a reputation around Athens for quite some time, and he's another guy I know who, I don't know him all that well, but I know he was always very high on Vanderbilt from the very beginning, and I know kind of like Carter. I mean, he recognized the success that the program had. the pitchers again that that Coach Corbin has put into major leagues. That what was appealed to him, and same thing with Carter. But yeah, Kumar Rocker was somebody that we've been hearing about in Athens for a long time.
Yeah, that is really weird to watch now because Vanderbilt, obviously, in terms of total athletics, has not been the powerhouse of the SEC across the last 50 years. It is a really weird dynamic to watch Vanderbilt go in and get kids out of other people's backyards. Mm-hmm. And Georgia's a program where it's had a lot of baseball success. What was the response to him going to Vanderbilt in that community?
Well, that's the folks disappointed. But again, he was never really interested in going to Georgia. I don't know if that was anything specific due to Scott Strickland, head coach. But again, he just had his mindset on where he wanted to go. He wanted to go where he thought he could have the most success as a team and success as an individual. And it's hard to argue with the decision, they made. But yeah, sure, there was some folks who question and wonder why he wouldn't pick UGA. But again, I can never fault anybody for picking Vanderbilt for baseball. Considering all the success that program's had.
I want to talk about the state of the Georgia athletic program as a whole. We'll probably start with baseball and then work into basketball, then go into football, where we've got some questions from fans too. But what's just the general vibe around that athletics program right now with fans and within that university?
It's probably as good as it's been in a while. Of course, a lot of it is due to the success of the football program and, high hopes for this year, which could be a very, very good year for the Dogs. But from what the baseball team has done the past 2 years, of course, a lot of people are upset they haven't been able to get past the regionals. But what Tom Crean has done with basketball, bringing excitement to that program, and just a lot more happy people around town now than what there was just a few years ago.
How much importance do fans place on the non-football programs? I know baseball has had its success. Basketball has probably been more dry than not, but had its pockets of success with Dominique Wilkins and right after him when Georgia went to the Final Four. Is that one of those places where as long as you're winning in football, everybody else is happy, or do those other sports carry some weight too?
No, those other sports carry some weight too, because believe me, if the basketball is losing, baseball losing, fans I deal with are going to talk about it. Are going to be upset about it. But it's on the flip side. If you're winning, you put out a good product, people are going to show up. And that's one fun thing with basketball last year. And I give Coach Crean a ton of credit for this. Georgia basketball is not drawn all that well. They had sellouts, I think, this past year, all but a handful of ball games, which was and they set a school record for attendance despite their overall mark, last season. In baseball too, we started seeing. Of course, Foley Field folks who have not been to Foley Field. It's not a big stadium. It only seats about 3,500. But they've had, 3,000, 3,200 would be about what you see on a normal midweek game even in Athens. So you win, people show up. It's kind of like the Braves, I guess. When the Braves were stinking it up and nobody showed up, but now that they're playing good ball, the place is packed all the time. Same thing in Georgia athletics.
Scott Strickland has had a strange tenure as baseball coach there, Dash, because I think there were 4 seasons where they didn't do much. Yeah. He came in highly regarded. He had taken, I think, Kent State to a College World Series. So you presume that there'd be some transferability of success. Didn't happen immediately. Now Georgia has hosted the last 2 years. I think it's been national seed the last 2 years. You and I had talked about this across the season. I thought that was a special team. The pitching and especially the defense were really elite. Did not expect to see them get knocked out of regionals 2 years in a row, and especially not this last year where Florida State came in and had them and really did just beat Georgia, but it wasn't really close some games, which shocked me. No. What's the vibe on them? Because I think that I always hate to see a good regular season like they had ruined by not advancing in the postseason, but I presume there was a little bit of grumbling after the year ended the way it did.
Oh, no doubt. 2 years in a row you don't make it past a regional that you're hosting. Yeah, people are going to start to wonder if you can get over that hump, and that's going to be the big deal for Coach Strickland next year because they do just they lost some good players like Aaron Shunk, L.J. Talley, Michael Tucker. But they do return this year. Emerson Hancock, Cole Wilcox, who's pitching with Team USA right now. Both those two guys probably going to be, early first-round draft picks next year in the 2020 draft. So that's going to be, I think, very important for Georgia to finally, get over that hurdle of the regionals, the NCAA regionals, and make it at least to the supers. If not, if they have the same kind of issue next year, then you start seeing even more grumbling. I think about the fan base, because again, a lot of people this year, and me included, I would have, especially after they beat Vanderbilt 2 games in Athens, I thought at that point in time this was a team that could make it to the College World Series, because at that time, and obviously it played out that Vanderbilt was the best team in the country, but just didn't work out that way. And like you said, I mean, the way it ended, Florida State just cleaned Georgia's clock. And just pitching, as good as the pitching had been, it just let them down, except that one game that Tim Elliott pitched one against Florida State, but one of the other contests he played in, pitched very well. But I guess the Seminoles, they just didn't have any answers.
Yeah, I saw Vanderbilt play all-comers all year, and the only 2 teams that really handled them were Texas A&M and Georgia, and I thought Georgia did it to a greater extent than A&M did. Losing that series to A&M was partially bullpen collapse and partially not showing up on Sunday. I just thought Georgia, pretty much start to finish, except for that late-inning home run by Walker Crisanti, was a better team,
right.
And so I was surprised to see it develop in the postseason the way it did. But next year, you mentioned they lose a lot of lineup guys. I think the starting pitching in terms of elite arms, they're probably top 2 or 3 in the country. Vanderbilt may be right in there that mix with them. My question, I think they lose Chris Stefack out of the back end of the bullpen.
Yes.
I think you said they lost Shunk. Their infield defense was about as good as I've seen. My question is, after their starting pitching, and they had some depth in the midweek there too, I noticed, do they have the parts in the back end of the bullpen and the lineup? Because I think the pitching is good enough, even if they're not good in other areas. They're still going to be probably a top 15 team just with that alone. But how well do they fill in around those guys in the lineup and in the pen?
Well, that's going to be interesting to see, because right now I could not tell you who the closer was going to be for this team. I mean, Justin Glover would be a senior, I believe, next year, left-hander, probably has the first dibs on that, right now. But they've got some question marks, I think. Once you get past, Wilcox and Hancock, you got Ryan Webb. He's a left-hander, be a junior next year. He's had some success. Was hurt a little bit last year, but they're going to have to depend on some guys coming in this year to fill out some of these ranks as far as the pitching staff goes. Now, they did get some good news with the fact that Cam Shepard, shortstop, will be coming back for his senior year, which Cam, I think, is one of the best defensive shortstops you're going to see in college baseball right now. His bat hadn't really been as up to it as he would like the past 2 seasons after a great freshman season. They do have Riley King coming back, played outfield last year, can play some third base as well, and Mason Meadows a catcher, Patrick Sullivan the first baseman will be back. But they've got some other spots they've got to find some answers for. So we'll see. The pitching is going to have to, I think, Hancock and Wilcox are going to have to kind of obviously lead this group next season.
Let's talk hoops. I think Georgia is one of the strangest basketball situations around, because the interest in basketball generally has not been there in a way. Like, you go to the SEC tournament and their fan turnout is not strong usually.
Right.
At the same time, their backyard, there's all kinds of players. They've had success in pockets. They've been to a Final Four, and they just attracted a really good coach in Tom Crean last year. They have always struck me as potentially a little bit of a sleeping giant. What's your take on where they are?
Well, like you said, they're in a great spot as far as being able to recruit talent goes. In this past season, Coach Crean probably locked up the best class Georgia. Could be the best class Georgia's ever had, from top to bottom, if you want to look at it that way. Anthony Edwards is a 5-star number 2 player in the country who's able to entice and come and play in Athens next year. It could be a one and done type of type situation, but yeah, that's what's all boils down to. That's what got Mark Fox fired. Just wasn't able to recruit to the extent that he needed to bring in the kind of talent that Georgia needs to be successful. And that's what Coach Crean is pretty much laying his entire reputation on, to be able to get these type of guys. And so far, like I said, this year, these past recruiting class, he's doing, I think, a pretty amazing job. And could be a lot of new faces, this year. Of course, Nick Claxton surprised some by entering leaving early for the NBA draft, but turned out pretty all right from being the first pick of the second round, and just signed a 3-year contract. It's going to pay him about $30 million, so it worked out okay for him. But it's going to be a different looking team, but they got some talent. We'll just see how quickly this talent develops as to how good the squad's going to be next season.
Now, are they in on Walker Kessler? Because what I read, I get very mixed reviews.
I think Walker's looking to go somewhere else. I mean, of course, his lineage in Athens is I think well documented. His dad and his uncle, both played here. His uncle was a star, is a member of the Athletic Hall of Fame here in Athens. Of course, the other Kessler kid, played at UGA for 4 years. But I think Walker just kind of, I think maybe wanted to, have his own, set his own a new destiny, new direction, I guess, so to speak. So I think he'll wind up somewhere else other than UGA. Is what we're hearing anyway.
Let's talk football, and that's where we're going to focus most of the conversation from here on. And we'll get into Vandy, Georgia matchup specifically. But Kirby Smart, I guess this is his fourth year there now. Had one good, decent to good year. Maybe not good by Georgia standards, but good by most. Lost some close games. Then really two national title contending type years. And it just seems like they're at a point where that's where they're going to be every year, right up in that Ohio State level of success where, probably 4 or 5 years from now, we will be penciling them in as a national title contender. Is that a good summation of where they are?
That's where they think they are right now. And I think just based on what they've been able to do recruiting, since Kirby's been here, it's probably a good assessment at this point in time. Of course, Georgia's yet to quote unquote win the big one, and that's something that's the fans here I know are very anxious to have happen. But Kirby has definitely changed the program. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. The entire culture is different. I mean, from top to bottom, there are expectations on every single person on his staff, all the players. It's just a different animal than what it used to be under Coach Rick. And that's nothing against Mark Rick, who I have great respect for. I thought he did a great job here in Athens, but Coach Smart has turned up the notch a little bit, and he's not afraid to take on all comers. That we've seen what Georgia's done schedule wise for the next 10, 12, 15 years, and really got some big name opponents on the schedule here coming up. But we'll say one thing missing for Georgia right now. They got one SEC title for the first time in a while 2 years ago, but now they've got to get a national title here before too long, I think, to kind of cement Kirby as the great coach everyone, a lot of people here think that he is.
Yeah, Georgia sort of has the issue that Auburn's had ever since Nick Saban has been there, or at least getting there, and that Alabama is the shadow that casts over everybody else, which is sort of an unfair spot when probably the last decade of Alabama football has been the best that anybody has ever had, if you consider the level of competition. Is there a way Georgia overtakes Alabama or that does not involve the retirement of Nick Saban?
I don't know. I think for Georgia's own personal sanity, the coaches, the whole program, they need to beat Alabama. They need to beat Nick Saban to finally feel, I think, they've taken that next step. I mean, personnel-wise, I think you line up both teams right now, you count 5-stars, your high 4-stars, you'll probably come out to about a even number on both teams. But obviously, the last two times, the Georgia played Alabama, some wonky things have happened, and the Tide have wound up, coming out on top. But I think it's going to take Georgia beating Alabama with Nick Saban's head coach for the program to finally get that feel that, hey, we have arrived as a national power in college football.
Yeah, looking at them, look, most people are predicting them to make the college football playoff, which that's a precarious thing when in the SEC because you slip up 1 or 2 games against a good team and that chance is gone. But at least they're projected at that level. Pretty strong across the board. Maybe some questions at receiver. Maybe some questions along the defensive line for them. I'm looking at where Phil Steele's got them rated in terms of defensive line. But right. Georgia's always got athletes. A really good offensive line, good skill position guys. Give me an overview on this team this year. Where do they think they're strongest? Where are they concerned?
Well, you talk strengths. I think you got to start with a couple of spots. First, I'll start with the offensive line. They've got, let me count up here real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've got 5 former 5-star players right now who are part of this offensive front, which I think personally, I've been covering the team for 23 years. And just on paper, this upcoming season could be the best offensive line Georgia has ever had. When you look at the talent, the experienced talent, Andrew Thomas, I think, is one of the best left tackles, not just in the SEC, but the country. But then you got to look at Jake Front, man. Jake's in his third year of starting quarterback, and I mean, I don't know what more you can say about the job that he's done, other than, again, the fact he hasn't won the quote unquote big game, but every other aspect of his play, in my opinion, anyway, has been outstanding. And anytime you have an experienced quarterback like Jake, leading your program, I think that bodes well. But there are some concerns. I mean, Georgia's wide receiving core is they're going to look a lot different than one last season did. Of course, so they lost. Riley Ridley, McCole Hardman, Terry Godwin, to either graduation or left early for the NFL. And of course, recently, Jeremiah Holland was kicked off the team for, hitting an ex-girlfriend. So that's left Tyler Simmons as the leading returning receiver with just 9 catches. So there's a lot of question on whether who's going to have to step up, and that's going to be probably the biggest storyline of the fall camp. Defensively, I think Georgia can be very good. Now, up front, the defensive line, there's not really a guy. I said maybe Jordan Davis, a sophomore nose tackle. I think who could probably develop into one of the better, nose guards in the conference. But they're pretty deep. They're going to be able to rotate, 2 or 3 different, defensive fronts. Throw that at you throughout the course of the game. At linebacker, they've got a lot more depth than they had last year. A couple of guys I really look for, like junior college transfer Jermaine Johnson and freshman Nolan Smith. And you add the guys they've got coming back like Adam Anderson, Brenton Cox, and the Kobe Dean inside linebacker from Mississippi they signed this past signing class was very impressive in spring ball. Channing Tindall, another inside linebacker. And then you go back to the secondary, which I think even though they lost DeAndre Baker, as an extremely talented, extremely athletic group, I don't think there's going to be much of a drop-off there. But question mark again, I think, is a wide receiver, just who steps up and who's able to make some big plays in that position.
Give me the rising star on that defense. I know J.R. Reed is an all-SEC, maybe all-American caliber defensive back. Mm-hmm. Seems like they always have a guy at linebacker or defensive back who's that next big star. Do they have one of those? I mean, I would presume they do because the way they recruit. But who's the guy that is thought is that next guy for them?
Well, I mentioned Adam Anderson. He's an edge rusher. I think he could step in and be a guy who could probably going to give you 7, 8, 9 sacks. Could really be a disruptive force. So something Georgia talked about all spring long was creating more havoc for opposing quarterbacks, getting more pressure, which Georgia, despite its success last year, was I think it was one of the worst teams as far as number of sacks go. That's something they want to correct this year. And the guy like Anderson, I mentioned Nolan Smith, freshman defensive and outside linebacker from Savannah, is a guy they're really, really high on as well. And Kobe Dean is another guy. Reminds me a lot of Randy Curran, if you remember him from a few years back. Not the biggest dog in the fight, so to speak, but a guy plays with a lot of heart, and he really is around the ball an extremely large amount of the time. So those guys right there are probably the ones I would be looking for on the defensive side.
You talk about the suspensions, and I think that's been a big deal. Georgia's got, I believe, a number of guys suspended for that opener with Vanderbilt. Who's in that mix?
Oh, gosh, let's see. Nobody let's see. I mean, Mitchell Holland, who's been kicked off. Tyler Simmons, was involved in a bar incident, and I'm not sure. Kirby, though, just because you were arrested, sometimes he works things out on his own, like extra steps or something like that at the stadium. So I'm not sure if there will actually be a suspension or not, because he's got a lot of leeway to kind of handle things the way he sees fit. But other than that, Tyler would probably be the only other one that would of note that would have started the game that had a chance to miss it. I think he'd be probably the only one right now, if memory serves.
What's the latest point spread on that game? I have not checked this recently.
Yeah, I ain't seen it.
They haven't said it then, yeah.
But I don't think they have yet. I mean, I would assume it'd be double digit something, but I haven't looked close enough to see.
How do you see this game? Because from a Vanderbilt perspective, it's a team that I think is loaded with offensive talent. To where I don't think that most people probably outside that fan base realize that they've got Keyshawn Vaughn, who's getting some All-American mention. They've got Kalijah Lipscomb, who is going to end up on basically all the career charts in the SEC, touchdowns, receptions, receiving yards, you name it. Real good player. They got 4 or 5 other really good receivers and an All-American tight end in Jared Pinkney with him. I think they're going to be, even though they lose Kyle Shermer, I think they'll be fine at quarterback if their offensive line holds up. Now, defense is another story, but I look at this as a game where I think Vanderbilt can put some points on Georgia. But what do you think? I mean, you know Georgia's defense better than I do.
Well, I'll say one thing. Just looking on paper, what Vanderbilt's got coming back on offense, I'll say this is the scariest Vanderbilt offense I've seen in a few years. I just from the you can probably talk 4, 5, 6 guys who I think will put a little bit of a fright in any defensive coordinator out there right now. In Georgia, they're going to depend on athleticism. I mean, they've recruited to a crazy height in Athens over the past few years, and they've got some guys. That's a defense that's loaded with 4 or 5-star performers, guys who maybe not all of them have played a ton of football. They've got guys who are athletically as good as you're going to find anywhere. But so it could be interesting. I mean, they've got a new defensive coordinator. Georgia does in Dan Lanning, who coached outside linebackers, last season. It's going to be still kind of unclear how he's going to run things. We expect Georgia to maybe show a little more pressure again than they did this past season. But athletically, I think Georgia's really going to match up anybody. I don't think Georgia's going to be a defense that's going to go out there and just stone people. I mean, they're not really built for that. It's built more for speed and using their quickness, athleticism to make things happen. So I'm sure Vanderbilt will have its opportunities to be successful. But we'll just see if Georgia just has ultimately has too much talent on defense to for Vandy to get too many points on the board. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not predicting Vanderbilt to pull an upset, mind you, but we've seen this series at times gets interesting. Vanderbilt's pulled some upsets.
Oh, no doubt.
And I think the timing of the matchup is interesting. Now, I think you could make an argument for both sides. You could say, well, Vanderbilt might prefer getting a couple games in first with the new starting quarterback. Although if it's Riley Neal, then he started 30-something games. If it's Deuce Wallace, then who I think is going to be started, that means that they like what Deuce gives them more than Neal, which I think is a good sign too. Mm-hmm. You've got the suspensions. You've got the young receiving core. You've got the talent on offense that Vanderbilt has. Is there any – I hate to ask it this way because predicting these things is tough, but with the suspensions and things like that, to me this looks like a game where it could be a little bit more interesting than people think if Georgia does not come in prepared for this one.
It could, but I think because it is, and again, I know Vanderbilt it doesn't have the football tradition and people may not respect them as much, but I still think the fact that it is the first game of the year, the game's on the road, that's going to get Georgia's attention now. But I don't think you'll see Georgia looking past, the Commodores. Say again, if they were playing again, they play Murray State in week 2. If Murray State was the first game, they'd be overlooking the Racers, but I don't think that's going to be an issue, Georgia. That's something Coach Smart has done pretty good of, since he's been here. You haven't really seen a lot of guys, looking past other, opponents, and you talk to the players, and you'll get the reporters will hate all these dry, cliche type, answers, but you'll hear Georgia players, have a lot, talk about having a lot of respect for Vanderbilt. I actually don't think that's just talk. I mean, I really think there's enough unknown. I think they will respect Vanderbilt's offense enough that they're going to be prepared. I think they'll practice just like Vanderbilt was like they were playing like, for example, Auburn or anybody else in the SEC to open up the conference campaign.
Yeah, I just noticed this. They're pretty good in openers. Under Smart, okay, the first opener, they were -3 against North Carolina, won that one 33-24. Were -14 in 2017 against Appalachian State, which is not one of those teams you want to play the first week, as some teams have found out. Won that one 31-10, and then beat Austin Peay. That was a 45-point line. That was a push. They won that 45-0. And even before that, 2015, 35-point favorite, beat ULM 51-14, and then 14 beat Clemson 45-24 is a 7-point favorite. So indications based on history are Georgia does pretty well in terms of openers compared to expectations.
Oh, no doubt about it. Like I said, that's something that Coach Moore has been extremely successful at, is getting his team ready to play. in most occasions. It didn't happen in the Super Bowl, but that's another story all in itself right now. But being this is the first game of the year, conference contest. I really think Georgia will be as prepared as they could possibly be for this game.
I'm going to the mailbag, which is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan Josh Minton, an independent insurance agent operating out of Brentwood. Looking for a one-stop shop to take care of your insurance needs? Josh has you covered. Call him today, 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Twitter at Joshua Minton HQ or Facebook at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He's my insurance agent. Give him a try. Tell him you heard about it on this podcast. Let's see. VU Imperial wants to know, who's the better back, Keyshawn Vaughn or DeAndre Swift?
Keyshawn Vaughn, I'm not familiar who that is. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think DeAndre Swift, has the potential to be have a great year for Georgia this upcoming season. He's not about to carry the load, so to speak, with like he did with Holyfield last year. He's a guy who I think can rush for 1,300 yards and probably catch for another 500 yards in passing. Now, Vaughn is a very, very good runner. I was just teasing about him, but two of the better backs in the conference. But we'll see. I mean, Georgia's going to really, I think, really lean on DeAndre a good bit, but Vaughn, I know, is going to put up some big numbers too.
Georgia's had a ton of great running backs. I mean, one of the top 5 programs historically in terms of producing guys. Does Swift compare to one of their past guys?
Oh, man, he's a little different. He's not the biggest, height-wise. He's only like 5'9", but he's about 215, 217 pounds. Very low center of gravity. Good question, but he's not really like Chubb because Chubb was just a bowling ball, and Sony was good as a guy who could very versatile back who could play a lot of different ways. But so no, I don't know. I think he's a little bit different than what Georgia has had. I mean, he's got that breakaway speed, and we saw that his freshman year in the SEC championship. We saw that against Notre Dame his freshman season 2. So no, I think just his overall ability to run and catch makes him I think a dangerous weapon that Georgia had in the backfield. I think you include him in the same conversation with Chubb and Swift in that regard.
Columbianador says, what are Jake Fromm's weaknesses? And asks about how he throws under pressure with the deep ball and with timing routes.
Well, the deep ball it's funny. His freshman year, his deep ball was pretty good. Had pretty good success rate. Last year, there were some times where I think he maybe tried to force the issue a little bit. A couple of times, I know the LSU game, particularly when the running game, started out good, and then they kind of fell back. And I think he started trying to do a little bit too much. But Jake's a guy, though. If he's got a weakness or something he knows he's got to work on, he's going to do that. So I think he'll. In fact, I know he's taken some great steps over the summer to work on some of his footwork issues, make sure his comfort level with the new receivers is where it needs to be, and that kind of thing. So, but as far as the game manager go, I think Jake does a great job. He just needs to, like the quarterback, he just needs to, I think, show some more patience sometimes. There are time to time he will try to throw the balls in a situation where he doesn't need to, even though he doesn't have a ton of interception over his career. Sometimes he has try to force some action.
Their quarterback situation has been such a weird thing because they had Jacob Eason, and then they had the kid Fields who just transferred to Ohio State. Was this just the case of the cream rising to the top and the other kids realizing it?
That was a big part of it. Of course, just the Fields issue. Of course, there was, that was such a, and we could spend another 45 minutes talking about how that whole deal worked out there. Of course, there was the fact that I think he kind of realized he wasn't going to play over Jake, but also they had the incident with the former baseball player. They're making a racist comment during a football game, and that was supposedly one of the reasons he decided to transfer. Didn't feel comfortable around Athens for whatever reason. I won't get into all of that. What I think about that, but it's just one of those things. I think it kind of hurt the team last year a little bit too. There was Jake Fromm and Justin Fields. People always wonder when Justin Fields going to get his shot. It never really did happen. But now this Jake Fromm's team, there's no looking over his shoulder, and I think that's actually going to probably help him this fall.
Columbiana Door also wants to know what team did surprising well against Georgia last year, considering its talent. What did they do different schematically?
Missouri has had some success last year against Georgia, actually running the football, which maybe surprised you a little bit considering they had Drew Lock, controlling their, running the offense last year. Georgia, but a game at Columbia last season, Missouri was able to rush. Actually, all the touchdowns. That's what scored 4 touchdowns in that game, and all of them were rushing. Didn't give up a touchdown pass. So that was a kind of weird contest, but just one of those games Missouri was able to find some cracks, have some success, and they're going to be another dangerous point for Georgia this year.
Well, the other one, and this fits kind of a different category. They were 7-point favorites, and they go to Baton Rouge and get hammered. What happened in that game?
Yep. Oh, a lot of stuff happened in that one. George started out well in that contest, actually running the ball very effectively, especially with Elijah Holyfield. It was ripped off 5, 6, 7, 8 yards, but LSU got the lead, and Georgia kind of went away from this offense. They really tried to start throwing the ball, pretty much 3/4 of the time, and didn't go back to the run. And after the stop or two, LSU the offense able to get it going, got a 2-score advantage, and really was just able to kind of control the ball game from there. There was some questionable fake kick that they tried to throw it back pass to kicker Rodrigo Blankenship, which was doomed from the very beginning. It didn't help matters when they were in the Tiger red zone. And just one of those games where just LSU played their tails off, and Georgia, didn't play one of the better games.
Yeah, to that, this is a good question. TB Graham says, can Kirby Smart call a bad fake punt like he did in the championship game? It could be payback for Woody in '99. I don't know if you remember that play. do you remember the game I'm talking about?
I do remember that play. I do remember that play too. That was one for the books. But yeah, that fake punt against Alabama, that's one fans still cringe whenever they they talk about that. And I remember watching it live at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It was like, what in the world are you doing? Still, you got to lean on your defense at that point in time. But they thought they had something planned, but Alabama was not fooled by that play. So Kirby Smart and fake plays have not gone too well since he's been here. That's something fans are always quick to remind me on our message boards.
South Florida VU asks, how is Coach Cortez Hankton doing as Georgia's wide receivers coach? Of course, he came to Georgia from Vanderbilt.
Yeah. He's done exceptionally well. Receivers all speak very highly of him. Of course, Cortez had experience as an NFL receiver, and that to these kids that speaks volumes. Whenever you've got a coach who has played in the show and not just talking to it, he's speaking from experience, and he can tell you things that's going to help you in your future. And I think Coach Cortez is really come in. And I think really made a name for himself. He's become a very good recruiter. He's able to convince Lawrence Cager, a grad transfer from Miami, to join the program this year, and he's going to have to play a big role. But Cortez has really done a great job. I know Georgia's very fortunate to have him.
Knoxville Door 94 wants to know about Georgia's biggest weaknesses. I think you may have hit that earlier in the podcast. I'll let you touch on anything with that question that maybe has gone unanswered, and just give any final thoughts of aspects of Georgia or that game with Vanderbilt in particular that maybe we didn't get into before we go to some questions on your cousin.
Yeah, well, like I said, my biggest question right now is the receiving corps. Do they have enough guys who will be able to step up? And again, they've got some guys coming in. I mean, George Pickens is a 5-star guy from Hoover who signed with us past year. Dominic Blaylock, another high 4-star guy who I think is going to come in and make a big contribution. I mentioned Lawrence Cager, former Miami wideout who played extensively for the Hurricanes, has put up some very good numbers. They got some other kids too, I think, who I'm not as concerned about wide receiver core, I guess, as some are, but until these guys do it, I think that's always going to be a little issue. Another Coach Smart is going to talk plenty about that this year. Defensively, I still kind of wonder what happens. Now, this doesn't really fit Vanderbilt's style of play, but when they line up against a team that's going to just try to play smash mouth football like an Auburn, like an Alabama, how they're going to be able to stand up to that type of stress. That's because the defensive line, again, they've got some good size up there. Most of the defensive tackles are over 300 pounds. They get some good athletes, but just what's going to happen when somebody hits them in the mouth? That's what I want to see how that group does. But overall, though, I think this Georgia team this year is is as talent from an athletic standpoint as talented as I've seen. Since I've been covering the programs. Again, some guys who have to, or younger guys are going to have to step up and really do some, start, playing up to their stars, so to speak. I guess if you want to call it that. But from an athletic standpoint, it's a deep program. There's depth everywhere, and they've just got to put it together.
Okay, let's go back to a couple of questions from Door Fan on your cousin. He wants to know, is there a big league or college pitcher that your cousin Carter Holton reminds you of?
Well, I've had this mentioned to me before. Carter reminds this one coach a lot of Jeremy Sowers, who obviously, Vanderbilt did such a great job, pitching for the Doors, several years ago. Well, it's been a long time now, I know, but very similar as far as their build goes, style of pitching. Both of them throw very similar pitches, and that's the guy. If you want to just pigeonhole one player that I've had compared to him before, it'd be Jeremy Sowers.
Okay, he wants to know about his arm slot and whether he'll develop into a power pitcher or whether he's a control guy. You and I talked about this a little yesterday. Part of his thing, he's up to 90, but it's a high spin pitch that, from watching video, gets on the hitters pretty quickly.
It does. He's probably a three-quarter delivery guy, but that he's got his spin rate is really high. He's got a curveball that'll break 12-6. I mean, high school hitter cannot touch it right now, but he's also throwing right now at that tournament in Oklahoma. He topped out at 92, and he's still 16 years old. So right now he's 5'11", about 170 pounds right now. He's going to get bigger, and I would suspect by the time he gets to Vanderbilt, and it is what people have told me, they expect him to be in that 95, 96, 90, maybe 97 range with a full repertoire of a great curveball and a great changeup that he's got right now as well. He throw a slider too, but his coach at Benedictine is kind of keeping him from throwing too much of that right now because I know he's putting excess strain on his arm. But he's been healthy, knock on wood, his whole life, and hopefully that remains the case because I think he could be a very special player for the Commodores coming up here real soon.
Door Fan wants to know if he projects as a pitcher. I know he's a two-way player, but I think they're just talking to him about being a one-way guy, correct?
I think so, but again, he's with the numbers he's put up, I'm sure Coach Corbin's going to give him a look. I mean, right now he plays right field, and when he's not pitching, he's played a little bit of first base. And guy he's batted over 450 his first 2 years of high school ball. So I'm sure he'll get a look. Now, whether it'll be one of those situations where he would be a position player for the Doors on the days he's not pitching, I don't know. But pitching is what he's all about. And that's what's going to ultimately get him to the major league. But he may be a good enough hitter too, where he gets a shot doing that as well.
And we talked about his stats. I know that wasn't just a one-off thing. If I remember correctly, he threw, was it a perfect game or a no-hitter his first game as a high school freshman?
Yeah. I believe it was the second game he played, and he pitched to play Statesboro at Grayson Stadium in Savannah, the minor league park, and threw a perfect game, struck out 17 guys in 7 innings. So yeah, he was still like 14 years old at the time. So he's had quite a successful run at a very early age, and somebody we're all very, very proud of what he's doing.
That's crazy. Anthony, thank you for joining us today. You've been a good friend to me. You're one of my favorite guys in this profession. I think the podcast today has been great. Best of luck to you and your family. You guys put out great content, EGAsports.com. It's a great way to follow one of Vanderbilt's rivals. Tell people about what you guys do and where to find you.
We've got a great group of guys on our staff. I mean, I'll just mention real quick, Jake Roos and Trent Smallwood handle our football recruiting. Do a great job with that. We've got Patrick Garvin, who helps me out covering Georgia. He's also is a Georgia football historian. He's written some good look back stories. He'll talk to former players and does a really good job of that. Of course, writing the Bolster, our publisher, has some great inside notes that our subscribers love. And I cover the football, basketball, and baseball teams as the beat writer. But I invite fans to come check it out. UGAsports.com. Most of our content, a lot of our content, is free. Especially our football info is free. Come check it out and see what it looks like for Georgia as they get ready to play the Commodores. And want to follow me on Twitter? You can do so on Anthony-1.
Hey, thanks a bunch, Dash.
Yeah, man.
All right, he's Anthony Dasher at UGAsports.com. I'm Chris Lee, host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back with at least one more of these later in the week.